Somewhere near a highway off-ramp, a metal roll-up door rattles open, and a man slides one cardboard box inside a 10 by 10 room. He pays $85 a month for that room, and he barely thinks about it again. There are 301 of these facilities in the United States, holding 2.1 billion square feet of other people's stuff. That is roughly 6.5 square feet of empty storage for every single person in the country. Nobody drives past these beige buildings and thinks, there is a fortune in there. That is exactly the point. The most reliable wealth in America is often the most boring thing on the street. So here is the thesis. The quiet millionaires are not chasing the exciting win. They are collecting rent on rooms full of forgotten furniture. Let's be honest. When you picture getting rich, you do not picture a padlock and a dusty hallway. You picture a screen with a green line going up, or a startup, or a coin that 10x's overnight. And that picture is quietly costing you money. Because while you wait for the thrilling opportunity, boring cash flow assets are compounding for someone else. Self-storage as a sector is worth around $44.3 billion a year in the United States, according to industry data from 2024. It grew for decades while nobody was watching. And that is the trap. The assets that feel exciting are usually the ones fighting for your attention, which means everyone else is fighting for them too. The assets that build real money tend to be silent. They do not trend. They do not need you to believe in them. They just collect rent. The cost of not understanding this is not just missing one investment. It is a whole pattern. You keep skipping the calm, repeatable thing because it does not feel like winning. You want the story you can tell at dinner, not the padlock nobody claps for. Then you look up in 20 years, and the person who bought the beige building is the one who is actually free. Think about that for a second. The excitement you are chasing might be the exact thing keeping you poor. So in the next few minutes, I am going to walk you through how ordinary, unglamorous assets quietly build serious money. We will start small and cheap, move up to land and property, then get to what the genuinely wealthy protect when nobody is looking. Stay to the end, because the last one ties all of it together into a single principle you can actually use. It is the reason the storage guy sleeps better than the day trader. And it is simpler than you think. Here's what almost nobody tells you about self-storage. The whole thing runs on almost no staff. A single facility can be managed part-time or remotely with smart locks and a camera or two. Compare that to a restaurant, which needs a small army just to open the doors. Operating a storage facility eats up only about 30 to 50% of its revenue, and the industry's average profit margin sits near 36% versus roughly 22% across all businesses. That is the machine. Concrete boxes, a fence, a gate, and rent that shows up whether or not you are paying attention. It is like owning a vending machine the size of a parking lot. The snacks are your neighbor's old couch. Now think about who actually rents these units. About 11.1% of American households pay for storage right now. That is roughly 14.5 million families paying every month, on average around $85 each. None of them enjoy it. That is the beautiful, slightly grim part. Storage is not a want, it is a stall. People rent a unit during a move, a death, a divorce, a downsizing. The industry literally calls these the 4Ds. Life keeps producing them in every economy, good or bad. So the demand does not switch off when the market gets scary. And the tenant almost never leaves on schedule. The average storage customer stays around 14 months, far longer than most people intend when they sign up. You tell yourself it is for a few weeks. Then the boxes become furniture, and the furniture becomes forgetting, and the autopay just keeps running. It is a want that turns into a habit that turns into an annuity. The owner does very little, and the small check keeps arriving. There is a strange psychology working in the owner's favor here. Once your stuff is in the unit, moving it out is a whole miserable afternoon. You would need a truck, a friend, and a free Saturday, and you have none of those right now. So the $85 feels easier than the effort. The owner is not really charging you for space. He is charging you for the inconvenience of leaving, and that is one of the stickiest products on earth. Gyms figured this out years ago. Storage just does it with a padlock instead of a treadmill. And there is a quiet pricing trick most renters never notice. A basic 10 by 10 unit might run around $85, but a climate-controlled one of the same size averages closer to $145 a month. Same concrete, a little cool air, a much fatter margin. The owner is not selling square footage anymore. He is selling peace of mind about your grandmother's piano, and peace of mind has a very high markup. It is the popcorn at the movie theater, priced for the feeling, not the cost. You already decided to store the stuff. The upsell writes itself. Here is the mini payoff of Act 1. Small, cheap, unglamorous assets win because they are cheap to run and hard to quit. But the individual unit is tiny. $85 is nothing on its own. You cannot retire on one padlock. So the obvious question is, how does anyone turn a room full of holiday decorations into real wealth? For that, you have to stop counting units and start counting buildings. The moment you own the whole facility, the math changes shape. A mid-sized storage property running 200 to 500 units at decent occupancy can pull in somewhere between $500,000 and $1.25 million a year in revenue. And because operating costs are low, a large chunk of that falls to the bottom line. You are not really selling storage. You are selling the same patch of dirt to a few hundred people at once, over and over, every month. That is the quiet trick of property. The land sits there. It does not clock out. Storage takes that idea and strips it down to the studs because the building is cheap, the tenants manage themselves, and the rent resets fast. Most storage leases are month to month, which means the owner can raise prices to match the market almost immediately. A landlord with a 12-month apartment lease cannot do that. The storage owner can nudge your rate up while you are busy forgetting you still have the unit. And notice how little the building itself demands. A storage facility has no kitchens to remodel, no leaky bathrooms, no tenants calling about the heat at 2 in the morning. It is metal walls, a concrete slab, and a gate. When something breaks, it is usually cheap. Compare that to an apartment complex where every unit is a small ongoing repair bill with a person living inside it. The storage owner sells the plainest product imaginable, which is empty space, and empty space almost never files a complaint. Let me give you a real name. B. Wayne Hughes started Public Storage in 1972 with about $50,000 and a business partner. They put a sign reading "private storage spaces" on a warehouse. A customer asked if the public could use it, and they quietly changed one word. By the time Hughes died in 2021 at age 87, he was worth around $4.1 billion. His 2 children became billionaires from the same beige buildings. Nobody wrote breathless headlines while it was happening. It just compounded, one padlock at a time. And Public Storage is not a fluke of one clever man. It is now a public company generating roughly $3.4 billion in annual revenue as of 2023, running more than 3,500 locations. Its main rival, Extra Space Storage, runs about 3,166 facilities and pulled in around $2.56 billion. These are enormous businesses built entirely on the thing you drive past without a glance. The stuff inside is worthless to you. The rooms around it are worth billions. Here is the part that should sting a little. As a group, self-storage real estate trusts delivered about 17.3% average annual total returns since 1994, according to industry figures. Over that same stretch, the broad stock market returned closer to 10.1% a year. The boring boxes beat the exciting market for 3 decades by a wide margin. $100 put into Extra Space Storage 20 years ago would be worth close to $969 today. Extra Space alone returned more than 400% over the past decade, one of the best runs of any property trust in the country. And you did not have to buy a building to get it. You could have owned a slice of all those beige hallways from your couch through a single share. Sit with that for a moment. The most exciting thing about self-storage as an investment is that it is not exciting at all. There is no story, no founder on a magazine cover, no product launch. There is just rent, collected, raised, and reinvested, decade after decade, while louder assets came and went. That is the mini payoff of Act 2. Land plus low costs plus rent that resets equals a compounding machine most people never even consider. But there is one more level. Because the biggest players do not just want the returns. They want something harder to describe, something the truly wealthy quietly protect. That is Act 3. The wealthy are not chasing storage for the thrill. They are buying it for a specific feeling, and that feeling is durability. Here's what almost nobody tells you. A self-storage facility can break even at only about 40 to 45% occupancy. An apartment building usually needs closer to 60% just to cover itself. That gap is the whole secret. It means storage can be more than half empty and still not lose money. That is not an investment, that is a bunker. Think about what that buys you in a downturn. When the economy panics, apartments get tense and offices go dark, but storage demand often holds or even rises because people are downsizing and dislocating. The 4Ds do not care about the headlines. A family losing a house still needs somewhere to put the couch. A recession does not empty the units, it fills them, and the owner keeps collecting through the exact months when louder investments are bleeding. So the wealthy treat storage the way they treat farmland or a paid-off building. It is not the flashy part of the portfolio. It is the part that lets them sleep. It is like a heavy anchor on a boat. Nobody admires the anchor right up until the storm arrives. And here's the deeper reason the truly rich love an asset like this. When you already have money, your biggest fear stops being missing the next big win. It becomes losing what you have. The whole game flips. You are no longer hunting for a thrill. You are hunting for something that will not blow up on you. Storage fits that need almost perfectly. Low costs, sticky tenants, demand that survives bad years, and a break-even so low the building can be half empty and still fine. It is not the asset that makes you rich fast. It is the asset that keeps you rich for a long time, and that, quietly, is the harder trick. There is also the boredom mode, and it is very real. Storage is so unsexy that it faces far less competition for attention than you would expect. Roughly 64% of all storage facilities are still owned by small, independent operators, not the big chains. The industry is fragmented, unglamorous, and largely ignored by the people hunting for the next exciting thing. That neglect is the opportunity. While everyone crowds into the loud trade, the calm operator quietly buys the beige building on the corner and raises the rent 9%. Think about what that fragmentation means. In most industries, a handful of giants own almost everything, and the little guy has no way in. In storage, 2/3 of the market is still small owners, many of them older, many of them ready to sell. A patient buyer can roll up a few tired facilities, add a website and smart locks, and turn a sleepy lot into a real business. Nobody is bidding against him with a hedge fund and a spotlight. The plainness of the thing is the reason the door is still open. Glamour attracts crowds. Beige repels them, and the person who does not mind beige gets to walk right in. And notice what the wealthy are actually protecting here. It is not just money, it is control over their own time. A storage facility does not need them at a desk. It does not call at midnight. It throws off cash while they do something else entirely. That is the thing money is supposed to buy, and almost nobody buys it because it does not feel like a victory. The mini payoff of Act 3 is simple. The rich protect boring, durable, cash-producing assets because durability is the real luxury, which sets up the one exception you have to hear before you get any ideas. Let's be honest, because this is where the beige building bites people. Storage is not magic, and it is not passive on day one. When someone builds a brand new facility, it usually takes 18 to 36 months to fill up and stabilize. During that stretch, you are paying the loan on a building that is half empty, sweating every new tenant. Plenty of first-time developers underestimate that gap and run out of cash before the units fill. The break-even cushion I praised only helps you once you have tenants. An empty new building has no cushion at all. And the industry does swing. Rates have actually been sliding lately. The average monthly cost of a unit fell from about $110 in 2022 to roughly $85 in 2024, as a wave of new construction flooded some markets with supply. When too many owners notice the same easy money, they all build at once, and the rent everyone can charge quietly drops. If you overbuild into a crowded market or overpay for a facility at the top of a cycle, boring does not save you. The asset is durable. The price you pay for it is not automatically safe. Respect the machine, but do not assume it runs itself from the first day. Location still matters, timing still matters, and paying too much still hurts, even for the calmest asset on the street. So here's the last item, the one that ties the whole thing together. It is not really about storage at all. Storage is just the clearest example of a single principle the quiet millionaires understand, and the excitement chasers never do. The principle is this. Wealth is built by owning things that pay you small, repeated amounts, and then feeding that cash into the next thing that does the same. Look at what actually happened with public storage. One warehouse threw off rent. That rent bought a second location. Those two funded a third. Nobody hit a jackpot. They stacked $85 checks until the stack was worth billions. Every asset in this whole video followed the same shape. The storage unit, the land, the durable holding of the wealthy, small, repeated, reinvested, stacked. The magic was never in any single unit. The magic was in never breaking the chain. It is not one thing, it never is. It is the same small motion, repeated until the numbers get silly. Most people quit the motion because it is dull, or they interrupt it to chase something shinier, and the chain breaks. The quiet millionaire's only real skill is refusing to break the chain. He does not need to be smart on any single day. He needs to be consistent across 1,000 of them. That is why the storage guy sleeps and the day trader does not. He is not trying to be right once. He is trying to be paid 100 times and to point that money at the next boring box. Here is the line I want you to keep. Boring assets do not make you rich in a day, they make you rich on purpose. The exciting win is a coin flip. The repeated small win is a machine. And a machine, left running, quietly turns an ordinary person into the last thing anyone expected. A millionaire nobody noticed. So the next time you drive past that row of metal doors, you will not see beige. You will see a stack of small checks, compounding in the dark. Picture two people who started with the same modest savings. Marcus wanted the thrilling win, so he chased the loudest trade every year, jumping from one exciting thing to the next, always sure the big one was coming. Delia did something dull. She bought a small stake in unglamorous, cash-producing assets, took the little checks, and calmly bought more. For a long time, Marcus looked smarter, and he said so. Then the years did their quiet work. When they compared notes much later, Marcus was still waiting for his moment. Delia was not waiting for anything because her boring boxes had already carried her past it. She never had a big day. She just never stopped stacking the small ones. That man near the off-ramp, sliding one box into one room, was funding her whole life, and neither of them ever thought twice about it. Share this with the one person you know who is still waiting for the exciting win. Then like and subscribe, and go find your own boring machine.